Hello YouTube, it's Reed from Fresh from the Garden, and we're fresh at the garden. Today we have a really special spring update, and I kind of wanted to talk about the annuals of the garden, the perennials, including the fruit trees and the berries, and some oddities, in addition to some insect interactions I've noticed. So it's a really exciting time with the garden. It's been growing really well. So focusing on the annuals first, because that's kind of the hallmark of the season. Most of my work has been coming to water the annual beds that I laid out in more or less the pattern from last year. But this year, instead of tilling, I just added the compost, which works really well. It's a nice black compost. The one disadvantage is that it dries out really quickly in the sun. So I have to come and water it basically every day. And I think that's probably why some of the annuals came up really well and other lines didn't come up, just a drying out problem. But the stuff that did come up is doing really well, and specifically the carrot sprouts are looking really good. They've got a nice frilly leaf look to them. I probably need to thin out them a little bit, and also I need to do some weeding, but it's really hard to tell a carrot sprout from a grass sprout right at first, so I've let them grow up together. And then in the next couple weeks I'll go ahead and weed out everything, and eventually I'll mound up around the carrots a little bit to help them grow a nice deep root. But exciting about that, they're going to be rainbow colored carrots, so something you can't buy at the store. It should be extra tasty because it's extra beautiful. And also the beet sprouts are coming up. They're a nice red stem with some nice leaves. The nice thing about beet sprouts is when you pull them out, if you need to thin out the rows, you can actually eat the leaves, and they're quite tasty. So excited about those. Those should be good. The Brussels sprouts, I actually didn't sprout from seed, but they're doing really well. I got plugs from Hull Greenhouse. And the last week or so, they've grown probably double in size. So they kind of had a slow phase starting out, but I think we're in the exponential growth phase. So really excited about that. Never grown them before. I've also planted sunflowers and radishes. I kind of grouped those together because I'm using them in a similar way. Any space that I thought either could physically have another plant in it or needed to maybe compact the soil a little bit, I've just thrown sunflower seeds and radish seeds around the garden. So pretty soon we should have sunflowers kind of coming up all over the garden, and the radishes that will send out deep roots. I might eat some of them, but they also attract these really pretty white butterflies, which I noticed last year. So excited about that, just get some more biomass going. The kale has also come up really well. I did plant a few lines of kale, but I also kind of just threw the seeds places. And I've noticed both Jacinto kale and red Russian kale coming up, which taste very similar but actually look quite different. It's really nice to have the breeze at the garden because it's getting hot out. So in addition to those, we also have the peas and the sweet potatoes. Now, peas are one of my personal favorite vegetables, and last year the bunnies ate all of my peas. So I'm really excited to see the peas this year, and they've also in the last week or so really started to take off. Sweet potatoes are also delicious, and I planted 3 of them around the garden. Never grown them before, but they seem to be doing pretty well, so that's exciting. I didn't really plant many other potatoes this year. I have one pile that I got some flood till and then put some potatoes in that, but other than that, not many potatoes besides the sweet potatoes. There's also a lot of perennials. Now, the perennials are something that I'm probably my favorite thing about the garden because you put them in the ground, they're beautiful, and they take very little work. So whereas the annuals I have to come and water all the time, the perennials kind of do their own thing. So I've kind of divided it into fruit trees and berries. In addition to berries, there's also the asparagus, which is a nice perennial, growing pretty well. But the fruit trees, the one disadvantage of this plot, we have the road that gets very dusty when cars drive by, but that's fine. But the apple trees are doing really well. We've got several different varieties. The new Honey Crisp, new Lodi apple, the Fecklin Rogue cider apple, in addition to whatever the apple I planted last year. I'll have to look up the tag for that. But the apples are doing really well. Now, the tree that I planted last year did get damaged, but it seems to be recovering pretty well, so that's nice to see. I've actually left a rootstocker that's coming up for now, so it can help heal the roots and heal that wound better than maybe it would do without it. The pear trees are also doing really well. If you guys watched the Russian cultural exchange video, the pear tree that grew the vodka is doing really well. It's actually leafed out even more. But there's a number of other pear trees, including alternate pear species, which is kind of interesting. So I'll show those around the garden. In addition to the apple and pear named varieties, I've listed rootstock at the bottom. So there's a number of pear, apple, cherry, and plum rootstock around the garden that eventually I'll graft on more conventional varieties, and we can get even more fruit for a more economical price. The plum tree, this is the main plum tree over here. It's the first fruit tree I planted in the plot, and it's doing amazing. Last year it almost didn't grow. It didn't leaf out until almost midsummer, and then only had a few leaves. And then by the time it had leaves, the Japanese beetles came and ate all of the leaves. So this year I'm really excited to say that it's grown already about a foot. And I expect it'll keep growing all summer, at least till the Japanese beetles come. But it's growing really well, so that's exciting. There's also a cherry tree. I just put the cherry in the ground. Well, I should say, I put a cherry tree in, it didn't grow, it died because it was bad rootstock. And now I put in one of the 3 cherry trees that did survive back in the ground. So there's still a cherry in the garden, albeit a different cherry than I initially planted. In addition, there's a cherry rootstock that I'll graft on some other varieties too next year. Also, there's 2 apricot trees, which I'm excited about. Both are growing pretty well. Well, one's growing well and one is about to grow. The buds are just turning green and about to burst open. There's in addition a couple peach trees. Now, peaches are sort of marginally hardy in Iowa. I've seen them grow, I've had peaches off of them, and the peaches I've had were delicious. The tree also died before it was 20 years old. So it's not the best place to grow peaches, but it is possible, and I'm trying to do it. So there's 2 peaches going in. There's also a ton of berries. Now, I've kind of used the term berry loosely here. I've included grapes, but basically small fruiting things. So the sea berries I just put in, there's 1 male and 3 females. They're very small right now, but someday they should be quite large. So that's exciting. Never actually had a sea berry, but I've heard they're delicious and high in omega-3 fatty acids, which is unique for a fruit. The service berries are all around the garden, and they're also very exciting. There's actually 2 different species. I'll include the Latin names in the video. I don't actually know them off the top of my head, but 2 different kinds of amelanchier. So I'm really excited about that. It should be good both for me to eat and also for the wildlife and pollinators. The grapes, as I mentioned, they're around the garden. There's actually 6 different varieties of conventional grapes and a number of wild grape stock. Now, I'm not certain they're compatible to graft onto, but I'll try. And the worst case scenario, it dies, the wild stock. But they're pretty interesting. The wild stock grows tremendously quickly, and the conventional ones are growing pretty well too. I just noticed as of yesterday that the ones that I planted last year of the conventional stock are sending out flowers. And so there's these green bulbs with very delicate little flowery hairs sticking out. So I'm excited about that, and hopefully they'll set quite a bit of fruit this year, even just being for their 2nd year. As with all the fruit trees and berries so far, I haven't really pruned them. They probably do need to be pruned, specifically the pear tree and some of these grapes. But I figure in these first couple years, I want them to grow as much as possible and be as hardy as possible. Now, I will have a video soon with the pear tree. I was speaking with my gardening neighbor, David, and he was mentioning that we should train the branches to go out laterally. So there'll be a video coming up soon of us doing that. But for the most part, if you see the fruit trees and say, wow, that really needs to be pruned, I agree with you, but I'm gonna wait until this winter. The currants are also doing really well. Specifically, there's a couple plants that are sending out a ton of fruit. Now, these currants almost got eaten to the ground last winter, so it's really impressive that they're fruiting so much this year. And I expect that next year we'll get even more fruit. I've noticed that the one hardwood cutting that occurred because a rabbit bit off a branch and I shoved it in the ground last winter is actually growing. So that seemed like a really easy plant to propagate. So that's exciting. I'll do some more of that this winter. Kind of related to currants are the gooseberries. Now, I've got a poor man's gooseberry over there, is the name of it, in addition to some wild gooseberries on the outside of the garden. If you take a gooseberry and a currant and cross them, you get a lingonberry. And I actually have a lingonberry over in the corner over there. So we've got quite a bit of that family. Really excited. I love gooseberries. I love currants. Never had a lingonberry, but if it's something like a gooseberry currant, it should be good. Also got raspberries. Now, I've got sort of a wild patch of raspberries that's growing like really well. And I think it's fruiting and it should be ready about a week or so. In addition to sort of the wild patch, I've taken the commercial varieties, the Bristol blackberry, the Caroline raspberry, I think it's like a pineapple yellow raspberry, and placed them separately so that they can kind of grow into their fullest. So I can kind of keep an eye on those. So the raspberries are going in really well. There's also one blackberry. So blackberries are related to raspberries in the Rubus genus, but you can tell the difference when you pick it because it comes out with the center of the fruit, whereas raspberries are just kind of the shell of the fruit. The blackberries will actually have the insert still inside. So that's sending out a couple fruits. It's pretty small, but I only planted it last year, so hopefully next year will be even larger. So those are coming in, really excited about that. The blueberries are also recovering well. Now, last year the rabbits ate the blueberries down to literally a couple sticks, but they're growing really well. And the interesting part is I haven't amended the soil. Well, with the exception of some pine needles that I planted them into initially, but they seem to be doing fine. I haven't done any sort of litmus test for this soil, but I think it's probably fairly neutral, because Iowa is not known for acidic soil. Now everyone says, oh, you're growing blueberries. Have you amended the soil to make it more acidic? Which may be true, but as of yet, I haven't noticed any problem with them growing in the neutral soil. So if they seem stressed in the future, I'll amend it, but to date, I've done nothing, except for try to make good soil for them to grow into. These strawberries are also doing really well. Just as of this last week, I've had the first June-bearing strawberries, which are much larger than the ever-bearing. And they were delicious, and I'm excited to have even more. Now, I haven't put any bird netting down, but so far I've only noticed one fruit being damaged by the birds. But in general, it's better to have bird netting than not. And the last berry I want to talk about are the honeyberries, which I probably should have put first because they flowered and produced fruit first. Now, this was the first year I've actually eaten a honeyberry, and I'll have some pictures from when they were ready. But they were larger than a blueberry, tartar, and tasted sort of like a plum, in my opinion. So like a tart wild plum. It was really fun. And the best part was they fruited so quickly before anything else was even ready. So that was fun to eat. And I'm hoping that next year they get even larger. So those are the perennials that I want to talk about today. Okay, so there's a number of oddities that I'm growing, and I'm using that term to describe things that are just kind of out of the norm for an Iowan garden, including a banana tree, which is kind of cool. It was an impulse buy, but it's grown pretty well. In addition to that, we've got a pomegranate tree, some dragon fruit, and some moringa seeds that are just sprouting. So that's really exciting to see. All of those things will need to be brought in the winter time, or the moringa I might just leave outside because it might be a tree by the time it's done. But those are fun, and I'll show those in the garden. In addition, there's a pineapple that I brought back out the garden from last year, and a fig tree, which is growing really well. So hopefully we get some figs this year. I don't think the pineapple will grow, and maybe some bananas, but who knows? It's kind of fun things to grow. It's good to experiment, so that's what those are. The last things I want to talk about are the insect interactions. Now, I've seen a cool video of a predatory wasp flying around the garden, specifically in the comfrey plant, hunting. I've also noticed some tiny red eggs over basically all the leaves in the garden. And I think they're box elder eggs because the box elder bugs are everywhere. For some reason, they really like fornicating on the wood chips. So every time I come out, box elder bug orgy everywhere. It's kind of fun. So yeah, now I'm just gonna walk around the So one of the cool things of the garden is you see things you've never seen before. So this is a purple coneflower, and it has some sort of pathology. I think it's a virus. I'm not a plant pathologist, but if you look at the leaves, they're all wrinkled, and it's a really interesting phenotype. Now compare that to the healthy one next to it. This is what a normal coneflower would look like. But it's just kind of a fun thing. It's not a food crop, it doesn't bother me, it's just an interesting thing to watch. And it is flowering, so that's kind of cool. And in the rest of the prairie spot, we've got a blazing star coming up, some volunteer dill. It's a prairie flower, I'm actually not sure what it's called. Some bergamot, some false indigo, which is blooming lately, and it's really pretty. So this is the prairie spot in here with an interesting pathology. I'll show you one other pathology over here, the different phenotype. So here's a pear rootstock, and the leaves definitely have something going on. Now you might say, oh, it looks like insect damage, but there's no obvious insects on the leaf. So let's get a close-up of a shot. Look at the leaves. See, there's just an interesting, I don't actually know what problem this is caused by, but some sort of thing's going on. So if you're a plant pathologist out there and you know, feel free to put a comment down below. It's like, what's going on with this plant, which would be very appreciated. So there are two concepts that I wanted to kind of talk about. Now, one's very simple. Wood chips are good. The wood chips around the garden are the key to the garden. I've been here when it's pouring rain out and also when it's bone dry. In the rain, they keep the ground from being compacted and keep it from being mucky to walk around in. And when it's dry, the amount of moisture, we can bring the camera down, it's just so, I mean, I'm down almost just a tiny bit and it's really moist and it hasn't rained in several days. So they're just really great for gardening. I highly recommend it. They control weeds, they add mycelium to the soil, they keep the moisture right, they're perfect. But that's pretty simple. The other one is vision. Now, I think when people first start gardening, it's maybe a little depressing because you see things like this apple tree. Now this Honeycrisp I just put in the ground, and you can say it's so small, it's not doing anything. But you have to imagine that eventually it'll be an apple tree and then you get apples. So it's good to keep in mind vision. So I can imagine the grapes will take over the walls, and what will this serviceberry look like when it's fully grown? Or what will this cherry tree look like? So it's good to kind of keep that when you're first starting so you can imagine a future that's full of fruit. Well, thank you for joining me on another video of Fresh from the Garden, and I look forward to showing the rest of the season. It's a really exciting time at the garden, and I think things are going to start growing really quickly. So I'll try to get some videos out and show you some of the updates.